What's up, YouTube? So before we get started with this video, on First Take, they're going to be talking about some comments that Antonio Brown made about Ryan Clark. So let's see what they have to say about that.
I want to talk to you about one of your former teammates, okay? Antonio Brown took offense to you mentioning his name in a tweet, and he came at you last night. The former wideout inferred a confrontation between the two of you the next time you two meet. Right. What's your reaction to AB's tweet?
Well, obviously, I replied. You know, and looking at it now from the side, and I'm gonna take it back a little bit. Before I retired, there was this whole thing on First Take, and it was kind of media versus athletes. And you know, Stephen A. and I actually kind of went back and forth about some things. And that night, he called me. Right, he called me. And
AB called you?
No, Stephen A. called me, and we had a conversation. One about African American brothers and being in the limelight and doing what we do, and the way that we approach each other and react to each other. And so there's been things Antonio has said about me that I've ignored for that reason. I've ignored them because I don't want them to happen publicly. I don't want that to be anything to happen outside of me trying to do my job. When you play football the way that I played it, and being somebody who people felt like was lesser talented, I was able to play because when it came to having a flight or fight response, I had no flight, right? If it was a small hole and it was Marshawn Lynch and he was coming out, my thought was I'm going to split him in half. And so when I see that tweet, my first thought is, all right, if that's what you want to do, I can't wait. But having to understand in retirement, I have to be different than that. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not embarrassed. It's exactly what I thought. I was actually looking forward to it. I would rather it have been, he saw me somewhere, he told me he wanted to catch a fade, we caught it, and we lived with life.
So that sounds good, Mr. Ryan Clark, but there's always been an issue between athletes and the media. It's always been like that, and I can't see that it's going to change anytime soon, because I bet you athletes look at the media because the media will throw out dirt on you. They will report all your dirt. If you get a DUI, if you get arrested for something, even if you're not playing well, the media jackals will have no problem throwing you underneath the bus, if you want to call it that, even though they're just reporting. So it's like the athletes, you can't really have your cake and eat it too, because everybody likes it when the media says something about you. Everybody likes it when the media says you might be the greatest player of all time, or you had game of the week, or whatever the situation is. But nobody wants to have their dirt thrown out by the media. And that's what the media jackals do. They report anything and everything. That's why athletes are mad about them. I mean, just look at Team Z. Look at Team Z. How many videos have they come out with that just completely ruined players' careers, even though they chose to get on videotape? Look at Ray Rice. His thing was on videotape, and he was never the same again. Look at the Kareem Hunt. His thing was found out by TMZ, and his career changed. He's still suspended. He got traded from the Kansas City Chiefs. So nobody wants to have, you know, their dirt thrown out by the media, and I think that's what their problem is. So, and also, as far as Ryan Clark, you've been ignoring all the things that Antonio Brown has said about you. Well, maybe you should have probably done that again, especially if it was thrown out over social media at a time of the NFL draft. That's something we say, you know what, no comment, I'll worry about that later. And if you don't want to, sometimes you can just ignore it, like you said, and not say anything. But if you don't want to seem like a wuss or seem like you're being pushed around by him, you're going to say, I have no comment for that, and I'll address that later or take care of it later. You don't have to do much. It doesn't take much to derail somebody that's talking trash to you. Just don't answer. So, I don't know. Let's keep going.
That's what, if I had a way for it to happen, if that was something that had to happen, I would rather it be that way, because now you involve everybody, right? Now I have to get on TV and talk about it, right? It stemmed from me doing my job and doing my job in the way that he felt threatened him in some way or that he was upset about. And I get that. But for me to reply in that way, for me to basically accept the challenge, I think I should have handled it a different way. I would like to say that I've grown to a point where I've gotten better in that. But for somebody to come at me, I'm going to respond. He tweeted later that he claimed it was Tony, not AB tweeting. Those are the same people to me, but he talked about having love for my son Jordan, which he does. They had a relationship. He spoke about me babysitting his son. You know, when Antonio Brown got to the league, he was taking care of a young son. And what I saw was a young dude who had been through a lot, who was trying to do the right thing as a father, you know, and we threw birthday parties and we paid for him and we did these things. And so sometimes those personal relationships and the emotion involved in that makes you feel like when somebody moves on to do a different job, they should protect you in a different way. And that I also understand, which is why I don't respond to a lot of the things he said, because I believe they sometimes come from a place of hurt or misunderstanding. And so in this, you know, whatever happens from it happens. I think I should have handled it in a different way, because it was the day that 32 kids got picked and got to realize a dream. And I have to get on TV and talk about tweets between me and Antonio Brown.
Yeah, so that was well said, Mr. Ryan Clark. And you definitely, even if it gets to the point where you have to fight, you don't want to be fighting. I'd rather have tweets go back and forth in the media and have nothing go get physical. Because if he sees you at an airport or you guys see each other somewhere and you guys get in a fight with each other, what is that? Assault and battery. You could be arrested. You could lose your job with on First Take or ESPN or whatever the situation is. It's just not worth it, and it just doesn't look good when you're trying to be a professional. So I'm happy he did it the way he did. Maybe next time just ignore it or say, no comment to that. But as far as, the fighting thing, I don't think they should be doing that. And Antonio Brown is working with, if you will, a different type of set of rules. Because Antonio Brown, he's still playing. He's still balling. So he's riding high. He's riding high on that horse right now of adrenaline because he's still playing. You, Mr. Ryan Clark, you're not playing anymore. Your life is kind of quieting it down a little bit. You're a little bit more of a professional because you're reporting and things of that nature. So it's going to be kind of different from you than what AB is going through. And I can definitely see why AB would be mad, because you're a reporter. You have to report the good, the bad, and the ugly. So even though you used to be a player, so you know both sides of the fence, but I understand both parties. So let's keep going.
Let me say what you can say. Okay? And I applaud you for handling it the way that you handled it. You see, Will, Max, and a lot of folks outside of the black community, let me tell you something about the black community. This is understanding that we have amongst one another. And the brothers, particularly in here, if they disagree with me, feel free, but you won't. Anybody could get got. That's a saying that we say. Anybody can get got. The reason why it's important to make that statement is, of course, Ryan, myself, and others, we're professionals. We're on television. We have a responsibility. We don't just represent ourselves. We represent the network, et cetera, et cetera. We ain't trying to get into anything like that. But the reason why it's important to just tell you what the mantra, what the mentality is, guys.
You can tell Will, I'm up on
I understand that. But the reason why it's important is because on many, many occasions, there's a little secret that goes on that y'all may not be aware of. You got cats who are professional athletes, who are black, that come at anybody in the media who's black. Because their belief is, excuse me, you're supposed to be down with us. Hell with doing your job. Your priority is supposed to be protecting us. That's their mentality. And a lot of times they're asking you to ignore truth, to ignore what the human eye is seeing, to ignore the responsibility that you have of doing your job, because your priority should be looking out for us. And where people like Ryan, myself, and others, Prime Time, Playmaker, and others, Hall of Famers, mind you, brothers that are in this business, that are on television, that are licensed to give their opinion. Where we find it offensive is that if it was somebody white, they got nothing to say. But when it comes to us, they not only disagree with us, they want to get volatile with us. Now, for the record, let me say this about Antonio Brown, who I believe for the most part is a good brother and obviously an all-world receiver. If I had to bet my money on a fight,
take the safety.
Wide out. Okay, let me.
So I would go with the safety too. I think Ryan Clark probably got them hands you can put on. It's just something about playing defense. You're a little bit stronger. Maybe I'm biased, but anyways. So as far as the, I guess the same minorities, if you will, getting mad at each other for reporting stuff. Well, maybe that happens because Stephen A. Smith, you might be or go a little bit harder on your own people than you would do with somebody that wasn't your same race. And that's probably what they're talking about. It's like, why are you up here? The athletes are probably saying, why are you up here reporting and adding emphasis to whatever may have happened, but you may not do the same thing to someone else that's not our race, which I understand because it goes to falling into line of you have to police your own. You have to police your own. So that's why I think Stephen A. is a little bit tougher on his own people. So people don't think, oh, you support whatever they're doing. I think Stephen A. overcompensates a little bit. So I think that's probably why a lot of athletes don't really like him. And for another thing is Stephen A. Smith is still the media. He's still a reporter. So he might report the dirt that you do because that's part of his job. It doesn't matter if you're both the same race. So I think that's where a little bit stems from. And like I said, Stephen A. may look at somebody in his race and report something or be mad about something that they do, and someone else that's not his race, he may not report or even really care about or may try to downplay. So I think that's a good portion of what people are talking about. So I don't know. Let's keep going.
Be clear, but it ain't gonna come to that. My big...
And wait a minute, wait. So for people that don't understand what I'm talking about, the difference would be, look at the way Stephen A. Smith reports stuff about his own people and other races versus how Shannon Sharpe does it. Look how Shannon Sharpe makes reports on his people versus make reports on someone that's not his race. There's a difference there, and it may be hard to see, but there's definitely a difference there. And I think that's what people are talking about, because Shannon Sharpe will report, but he still doesn't go overboard and generally tries to keep everything on a neutral, who reports stuff on his own people and reports stuff on other people. So Stephen A. Smith doesn't necessarily do that. He goes a little bit overboard, but Shannon Sharpe, there's a difference between the two. So if you watch both shows and know each reporter, you can tell there's a difference. And that's what generally Stephen A. Smith is talking about with the disconnect, like between him and athletes. So I don't know. Let's keep going.
Biggest issue is why? For what?
Look.
What was said about you that's so reprehensible that, by the way, you haven't lived up to? Since you've been gone from Pittsburgh, you called out Big Ben. I've been told that Big Ben had tried to reach Antonio Brown on several occasions, okay? And Antonio Brown ignored his text messages.
Well, I can kind of see that. Well, actually, we don't know what the direct stories is with that. The text messages going back and forth between AB and Ben Roethlisberger. But the thing is, like I said, what Ryan Clark said, you have to be a little bit more mature in a different spot than where Antonio Brown is, because he's still playing, he's still riding high, and he's still a top player. So he may get away with certain things, but you also have to realize that Antonio Brown, he's a diva. He's like a little girl that's going to get on Twitter and respond back to anything and everything somebody says about him. You have to be more mature about the situation and don't reply back to him. If you ignore a barking dog, eventually that dog will shut up or go someplace else. So I think that's where Ryan Clark is getting to. That might be where Stephen A. Smith is at. Like I said, Antonio Brown, he's a diva. He's like a little girl that goes on Twitter. But his skill set compensate for the garbage he does on social media. And nobody will care if the Raiders get to the Super Bowl and win. So, I don't know. Let's keep going.
You got other players speaking up and getting out of pocket and saying things they shouldn't say. In your defense, Antonio Brown got his money